Actually, the number of participants is still quite low. Maybe we'll start in 1 minute, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, maybe participation today is low anyway. Let's get started. Um, okay, we'll discuss last week's quiz, and I will point out apologies in advance. One of the questions was badly broken, and one of them was not up to the quality that I'm happy with. And eventually, this responsibility falls on me. So I apologize for that. The question that is broken, we will withdraw, and we will inform the NPTEL team about it. Naturally, anytime this happens, this hurts your learning. So for that, I am really sorry. We should try and do better next time. Okay, so we'll take a look at quiz 6 and then briefly talk about the next week's quiz also. Um, so the first question was quite straightforward, code comprehension. The lecture introduced this notion of default values for parameters. And so the question is reminding you that the input function can be called with no arguments. Sometimes we call it with a prompt, but sometimes we can also call the input function with no arguments at all. And that corresponds to the empty string as the prompt, right? And so that would be the proper answer for this, right? It's actually interesting if you have tried writing a function with this kind of default argument syntax. If you haven't, try it out in Python Tutor. The way it visualizes it is a little bit surprising, perhaps, and interesting. But the idea is actually very useful, especially if you do, um, if you write code, for example, in machine learning or in data science. There you typically have these functions with lots of parameters. But most of the time when you want to call these functions, you're calling them with some standard values of those. The arguments have some standard values, right? So as an example, I'm calling this particular machine learning model. There are all different kinds of what we call hyperparameters, right, that I might want to set. But many times when I'm first trying out a particular machine learning model, I might want to keep the hyperparameters set in a certain default way, because lots of people have said, this is like the standard way of calling this model. This is at least the first thing you should try out, right? So the point is you have a whole bunch of these functions with lots and lots and lots of parameters. These are Python functions with lots of parameters. And many of them are written like this with some default values. These are, you can think of the standard or safe values that are available, right? Many built-in Python functions also have this property. So this ability to call functions with some default settings is very useful. So the input function you can call without a prompt, and that's the default. Okay. This means that when you call these functions, you usually have to just apply a few arguments of your own. Okay, so keep the point in mind. I hope the question itself was quite straightforward. Okay, let's see. Let us know if you have questions. Okay, so question 2 is based on this piece of code to check if a given list of integers is sorted in ascending order. Now your friend wants to rewrite this using a for loop instead of a while loop, right? And the lecture talked about how it is often better to use a for loop when you can. So in this case, you can use a for loop, right? And basically, by using a for loop, you don't have to have this variable initialized and incremented. This increment in particular, or in general, any kind of update is very, very easy to forget when you're writing a while loop. Or even if you remember it, you may indent it or de-indent it, and it's in the wrong place. So it becomes a little bit tricky. Now, in all the examples that were mentioned in the lecture and this particular example, the code is actually quite straightforward. And many of you will feel, you know, this is actually quite easy. I'm quite comfortable with writing a while loop, right? That's fine. Please remember that eventually, if you develop your own style that you are comfortable with, that is the best scenario, right? But I wanted to point out to you that many people prefer writing and reading for loops uh, because many others find it tricky to get while loops correct. So even if you are able to get comfortable with while loops, keep in mind that your code will be eventually read by others, including yourself in the future. And you might find that it is easier to read with a for loop, right? So at least consider using a for loop when you can. Uh, it can be very slightly more efficient in some special cases, right? So here we can get rid of this line I equal to 0, and we can get rid of this line, and we will do a for loop where I ranges from 0 up to, but not including, len of data minus 1, right? So there are different ways of writing the minus 1, and only this one is correct, right? Uh, these other two are actually illegal, okay? This is saying a range minus 1, and you cannot subtract an integer from a range object. Try it out in Python, you should get an error. Similarly, this data is a list object. From a list object, you cannot subtract an integer. That is also an error, right? So this is the only legal way of doing it, right? Keep in mind that the range function goes up to, but not including this value. So although the list has indices 0 up to length of data minus 1, by setting I up to, but not including this value, I plus 1 will be a legal index, right? Again, this concept of stopping 1 before, in case you have to look at data I and data I plus 1, this has been explained in the lecture. Again, let me know in the chat if you would like me to clarify why this is range len of data minus 1 and not just range len of data, okay? Range len of data will take indices from 0 up to, but not including len of data. That is to say, up to and including len of data minus 1. That is all legal indices will be covered by this for loop. But in that case, the last index, you will not be able to access data I plus 1. That will cause an index error. Okay, so that is why that is how you would do it. Okay, and you don't have to do anything with the indentation. The indentation is fine the way it is. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Srivasha. All right. So this question is, again, your skill of taking some code and rewriting it to make it more readable. Okay. All right. Question 3 was probably technically okay, but I am not happy with the fact that we didn't design it well. So I will actually withdraw it. Okay. The reason is, I mean, I've got some options repeated multiple times, which I really should have avoided, right? Sorry, hang on, say that again. Sorry. Oh, maybe I misread it now while looking at it. This is for line 4, this is for line 5. Okay, so maybe we won't withdraw this question. Let me think about it while we are discussing it here. Okay. Um, there's at least one thing about this question that I don't like, which is, this replace with this for loop. It's not very clear what we mean by that. The reason why it's not very clear is while you can get rid of this while loop and replace it with a for loop, you also have these I equal to 0 and I plus equal to 1, and this potentially messes things up, right? So while it's a good idea to replace this while loop with a for loop, you can't simply do this. You would also have to get rid of the I equal to 0 and so at least the I plus equal to 1. Otherwise, it will mess around with the for loop. So for that reason, I don't really like this option. But let's first focus on uh, the problem itself, and then we can discuss whether it's worth withdrawing this question. So the first thing I want you to notice is there are many options here. And although this is a multi-select question where you have many options to choose, it turns out only one of them is correct, right? Right, and that is in this case a return type hint should be added, right? So firstly, let me clarify the distinction between the word should and must. You will come across this distinction also on the exam if you have signed up for the exam, right? Um, when I say should, it means it's a good idea to do this. When I say must, it means it's it has to be done, right? There's no choice about it. Should, there is a choice, and reasonable people could disagree, right? So in this particular case, this function is sorting some data. Supposed to, at least it's supposed to sort some data in ascending order, right? We have learned in lecture that a list is mutable. That means if somebody gives you a list and your function sorts it by rearranging the items in it, then at the end of the function, you don't have to return it. It's already sorted, right? So in that case, you might want to say that this function doesn't return anything. But you can't do that in Python. Every Python function returns a single object. It has to. If you don't write anything here and you don't have a return statement, then Python does return an object. It returns the special value none, right? So it would have been better to make that very clear to the reader that this function returns none. And so there is a type hint, a return type hint you can give, arrow none, that will make it very clear that this function returns none. It returns it silently. There's no explicit return statement, right? But return type hints should be given. They're always helpful to make it clear that there is that was the intention. Uh, you have got so used to, I hope, seeing functions with return statements. So the first time you saw this code, you might have felt, wait a minute, something is wrong. Where is the return statement, right? That feeling is a good feeling to have, right? It's very good that you're thinking in terms of, oh, I'm expecting to see a return statement. So if you see a piece of code that has no return statement, that raises the question in your mind. For that reason, a well-written function could even have a return none at the end. Make it very clear that this function doesn't return any object. The argument that is given, this parameter data is mutable. So whatever list is given, I will modify that. I will try and sort it. And then I don't have to return anything. I'll just return the special value none because Python forces me to return one object. And none is a standard kind of object to return when you really don't want to do anything. So this is should. If I had said the return type hint must be added, then it's not correct. It's perfectly okay to leave it as it is for some people, but it is good style to put type hints for parameters for return type. That is the preferred style. Okay, so I hope the difference between should and must is clear. Please do ask if you would like me to clarify further, right? So you will see these words. Look out for them if you are taking the exam. Also, with regards to the exam, I want to say one more thing about how we will give partial marks, right? So in this case, as you saw, there were lots and lots of options. And so it's very natural for us to feel, oh, in that case, maybe multiple things are correct, okay? So the grading scheme that NPTEL allows for me as your instructor for MSQs, multi-select questions, as opposed to multiple choice. In multiple choice, you can only choose one choice. In multi-select, you can choose many choices, right? So for MSQs, the two grading options that were made available to me, number one, if let's say there are some correct answers, let's say the first three options are correct and everything else is wrong, then the standard grading technique is only if the student gets exactly those correct, or those three correct, and leaves everything unmarked, only then they get the marks. Everything else they get a zero. Okay. But NPTEL also has another way of grading, and that is the second way is the one I have requested. So I want those of you who are taking the exam to be aware of this rule for grading MSQs, because this is how the exam questions will be graded. So if there are many options, let's say in this case, there's only one correct answer, this first one. Okay. Let's make it a slightly different. Let's say the first three options happen to be correct. Okay. So the rule is, if you uh, uh, select only, let us say, the first two of the three that are correct, then Hello. Sorry, my internet failed. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sir, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Can NPTEL team give me back control?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I've joined from my phone. Um, okay. So let's see. Okay. Okay. So we were discussing this question. So let's see, where were we? Okay, so we were talking about the difference between should and must, and I hope that is clear for everybody, the distinction between should and must. Okay. Um, all right. So this type hint should be added. The return type hint list of int must be added. Well, firstly, the return is not list of int. This function returns nothing. So that is certainly incorrect, right? If I call this list, call this sort ascending with the empty list, right? If I call this function with the empty list, then on line 4, I will get some sort of a runtime error, right? Well, it turns out if I call this function on the empty list, you will never actually reach line 4. Okay. Why? Because this length of this empty list is 0. So this is saying I equal to 0 while I less than 0 minus 1. So if I is 0, it is not less than minus 1. So immediately control will exit the while loop. There is nothing over here. So this function will silently return none, right? So we cannot get to line 4. And similarly, we cannot get to line 5 if the list is empty. And in fact, if the list is non-empty, like if it has one item in it, right, then the length of this list is 1. And if the length of the list is 1, then 1 minus 1 is 0. And again, when I is equal to 0, 0 is not strictly less than 0. It is equal to 0. So again, when I is equal to 0, this condition is false, and immediately we will quit. So for both the empty list, like this, and the list containing one item, we will never get to line 4 and we will never get to line 5, right? So it is impossible to get a runtime error on these particular lines for the empty list and for the non-empty list that has one item. Okay. Um, okay, and Joy has reminded me where we were for MSQs for the grading scheme. Thank you, Joy. So if you have multiple correct options, my test taking strategy for you is please only select those ones for which you are sure it is correct. In case you think something might be correct and actually it isn't correct, then by marking it correct, by taking that risk, you are risking getting a 0 for the entire question. So as a reminder, NPTEL, the exam, has the following grading strategy for MSQs, these multi-select questions with text with check boxes. Some number of these options are correct. Only mark those for which you are sure it is correct. Okay. It could be that one or a few of the questions have many options, and only one of those is actually correct, right? The one that you are most sure of is the one to mark, right? Now, these are the only two options that NPTEL provides for grading MSQs. So amongst those, I have taken the one that has maximum chance of giving you partial marks. The alternative is you have to get exactly the correct options correct, the ones that were specified, and that I feel is too much to expect in a high pressure exam situation. Okay. the exam. I mentioned last time that I will be giving a practice exam. Okay. Can you hear me? I got a message that my internet connection is unstable. I hope I'm still audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you
Um,
are good. Yes,
Thank you
sir.
so
Yes,
much.
sir. Yes, sir. Audible.
Okay. So I mentioned that I will give a practice exam, right? That practice exam, just to help you understand which are the concepts that you need to pay attention to for the actual exam. That practice exam I will give you as a uh, uh, Google form. Okay. Now, Google has this very aggressive grading strategy. Again, I will give you MSQs, but there, if you get even something slightly wrong, like you don't check something that was supposed to be checked, Google will give you 0. Okay. But the Google form is only for practice, and the Google form is that you can submit it many times and get immediate feedback, right? So you can use the Google form as a way to practice your skill of never overshooting, never selecting something that should not have been selected, and always being a little bit conservative. The score Google will give you might be a 0 because you didn't select something that you were supposed to, but NPTEL won't give you a 0 for that. They will give you partial marks, but only if you select options that are actually true. Okay. So things that you are sure are wrong, obviously don't touch those, don't select those. Things that you are not so sure about, please remember that if you select it hoping that you'll take a risk, then that might jeopardize all your correct answers also. Okay, so please keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So this question, as I said, I really don't like the way I asked it because of this option. This option is vague. Yes, in this case, you can replace the for loop with a while loop with a for loop, but I really should have also said then in that case, get rid of line 2 and get rid of line 6. Okay. So for that reason, I will actually withdraw this question. I will inform the NPTEL team that this question was incorrect. But nevertheless, I would like all of you to uh, uh, take a look at the learning opportunities from this question rather than the marks. So I hope all these options were clear. Let's briefly discuss the last two options. The statement return data must be added within the body of the loop, or the return data must be added after the body of the loop. Well, if you are going to have this function return a list, okay, you can do it. You'll have to do it after the body of the loop, not inside the body of the loop. Doing it inside of the body of the loop will be terrible. Okay. But there is no reason why these are must statements. This function can be used perfectly for sorting. It modifies the given list, and it does not have to return the list. Okay. That is not necessary for a function that sorts. Okay. Um, So Mohini is reminding me that the question 2 from week 4 also has to be updated if that has not been done. Mohini, thank you for the reminder. Shesh Kumar, if you're around, just please make a note of that. We will send the request to also do that as well. Okay. Um, okay. I hope this question was clear to everyone, despite the inaccuracies of the question, for which I apologize. Okay. Um, okay. This next question will be withdrawn because it turns out that there were multiple correct answers, and only one of them was given as an acceptable answer, right? So when we have a similar question on the practice exam and the actual exam, we will make sure that all possible correct answers are there. Unfortunately, in the quality check on this question, this got missed, and this is, as I said, my fault because eventually this responsibility rests with me. Okay, so sorry for that. There were multiple correct options here. Okay, but this gives us a chance to learn something new. Okay, so let's try and actually see why this code fails. Let's try and write a little Python program to try all possible ways of picking from the numbers 0, 1, and 2. We will sort that list according to this broken logic. This friend's code is wrong. And we will compare it with the standard built-in sorting technique. And if we can find a combination for which the friend's code doesn't work, then we will print that combination out. Okay, so we'll write a little program to test this on all possible ways of doing it. Okay, so let's switch over to my Visual Studio Code editor. I hope you can see this. So this is our friend's buggy code. Okay, it doesn't return anything. It just tries to sort this list, right? And I have added this in one of the lectures I mentioned to you. Please take a look at iter tools. It is a very useful library that is available in Python, right? And in school, you have learned about permutations and combinations. I'm sure somewhere in middle school, you learned about permutations and combinations. So there are some built-in functions called permutations and combinations. There is regular combinations, and then there's combinations with replacement. So some of you might be getting memories of your school mathematics class now when you learned about all those balls and bins and all this kind of thing. We learned it with probability, perhaps. Anyway, this is what we are going to try and do. Okay, so we will actually write a little test function. In fact, my AI is already suggesting that you probably want to test this function, right? So let's accept that, right? And my AI is making some guess that maybe we want to try for all data in permutations of 3 to 1 and for all data in combinations with replacement, etc. Well, let's tell the AI what we want, right? We only want to test combinations with replacement. So for let's say combination in combination with replacement. Now, how does it work? Well, you have to tell it from what pool of data you want to take the combinations and how many items do you want. So we had said that for our question, we have to choose data from 0, 1, 2, and it didn't say how big the array was, right? Let us try and firstly pick arrays of length 2 and then 3. Okay, because 2, why? Because we know that for arrays of length 0 and 1, we already discussed that this while loop doesn't actually enter. And if I have a list of length 0 or a list of length 1, it's already sorted, right? Think about it. A list can only be unsorted if it has at least 2 items and the first item is bigger than the second item, then it won't be in sorted order. Okay, so lists of length 0 and lists of length 1 are already sorted. Okay, by the way, that's an important thing to keep in mind, right? Empty lists and lists of length 1 don't have to be sorted. They are already sorted, right? Okay, so let's try and look at that. So for combination this is suggesting some code which I will modify. Okay, we only want items in the range, well, 0 to 0 to 3. Oh, sorry, 0 to 3. Why? Because the range function says start here up to but not including 3. Okay, so 0, 1, 2. Okay, and let us say I want 2 items. Okay, so pick 2 items with replacement from here, right? And now consider all ways of permuting it, right? So this is saying for all permutations of this combination that I'm choosing, right? Make a list of those permutations, sort ascending of that list, okay, and assert that the resulting list is equal to the sorted combination of the list, right? There is a built-in function for sorting. Okay, so I don't like this. Let me put it this way. If the resulting list is not equal to the sorted combination, right, then I want to print a message, right? Print that it failed. And this is actually going to return me. I don't want to return. I just keep this as it is. So let's read this code, right? So let's see. This is saying for every way of choosing items from 0 to 3, starting at 0 up to but not including 3. So for every way of selecting 0, 1, and 2, but picking 2 of those, okay? Let's try picking two of those. Now try all possible permutations of those items that you picked. Try using the friend's buggy function and check to see if the buggy function returns the same answer as the built-in sorted function. Okay. If it doesn't return the same answer, there's something wrong with the code. Print that out. Okay. So let's save this. Actually, we'll have to first call this function, this test sort ascending, right? So let's call that function. So here is our program. Let's run it. Okay. So I was already testing it on some inputs. Let me show you again. When you run it, it runs perfectly. There are no print messages. There are no error messages. Okay. Let me see. There's some questions on the chat. Okay. So this is saying that if you only pick two items, the friends function is actually fine. Okay. How about if we pick three items? If we pick three items, then you see the code fails on so many different ways. Okay. So any one of these could have been the correct answer. I'm sure many of you came up with inputs from this list. And good job, you would have found that the code actually fails on those inputs, right? There are many of them. Unfortunately, only one of them was given as the correct answer. Okay, so on all these inputs, the code fails to sort. So for example, on 110, it returns the friend's buggy function only produces the list 101. But of course, we were expecting 011. Okay, so all of these should have been given as options. The question, unfortunately, was broken. Okay, so this particular code I will share with all of you. We can paste this on the forum, right, so that this is available to all of you. So I will share this with the TAs to share with you on the forum, and try this out yourself, right? So the bottom line is this code fails on many different inputs, right? And this was only one of them. Okay, so this question, because of the fact that it did not, because it had many more options, we will actually withdraw question 4 as well as question 3. Okay, I hope this made sense. Please do ask if something was not clear. Okay. Question 5. So Lalita is saying it was only the wording that caused its confusion. Yes, Lalita, but as I said, the wording can be interpreted to mean, the do we want to include items with replacement, without replacement, right? So, for example, we saw for 101, one of these options that did not use the item 2 at all, just using zeros and ones, there also it fails, right? We asked for the shortest list, so definitely lists of size 2 could not work. Lists of size 3, there are many counter examples, right? There are many ways to refute this code with a list containing 3 items, right? So for that reason, this one will be withdrawn. Okay. Question 5 was helping you develop the skill of asking clarifying questions one more time. This time, the code uses this concept of a dictionary that we explained last time, right? So we want to find the next month of some given month, right? So for January, the next month is February. For February, the next month is March, and so on, right? But unfortunately, our friend has forgotten to ask a whole bunch of clarifying questions, right? And the code check link was made available to you, and you had to think about some of these questions. So it turns out the client really wanted to handle these short form names of month. Again, try it in code check. If you give the input Jan, the client says they're perfectly happy to accept the input Jan, and for Jan, they want February, because Jan is short for January, and then they want the next month to be February, right? And then some illegal month names, right? Now, interestingly, the example junk, right? Because junk is not a legal month name, but since the client wants short forms, and the client, it turns out, doesn't mind the difference between uppercase and lowercase, okay? Uh, then junk is also, the first 3 letters of junk are JUN, which is the short form for June. Okay, so if you try junk with the client will actually say, yes, for junk, I want July, right? I hope some of you tried this, and that is indeed the case. Okay, so the client is really only focused on the first three letters of the string and is not interested in the upper versus lower case. Now, the fact that this AI generated code does this statement, month is month.caseful, means they have already handled this situation. The client indeed wants us to ignore the difference between upper and lower case, right? Letters, right? And the client doesn't want May to return June all caps, right? Again, try it out. For May, the client, if you've given May with uppercase letters, the answer really should be June, okay, with written like this, okay? So this code handles those situations. You don't have to ask the client this, but these questions really did get skipped, okay? These questions were not asked there, right? So let's see. Akhil wants to know. I guess Akhil, you said you used, for example, something like ChatGPT over here to ask these questions, or I'm not sure. So for this question, the prompt refute answer, I prompted the refute answer and got the following. I see. This really sounds like something that maybe ChatGPT produced. Good. So you tried using ChatGPT. And should I ignore the difference in uppercase and lowercase letters? The casefold actually handles that, as I said, right? Um, okay, there's a whole bunch of things here that ChatGPT said. If you have a specific question, Akhil, we can focus on that part. Okay. Um, uh, let's see. Lalita says, NPTEL team, with regard to my query, replied that we need to consider only input and output as it's taken care in the written code. Again, Lalita, if you could just clarify what you meant by that, I'm not 100% sure. And Mitraman says, how can I say that the client doesn't want trivial changes, right? I mean, the code check link gives the answer for uppercase and lowercase, and this option should also be considered. Again, Lalita, Mitraman, if you could just help me understand exactly what doubt you have, we can take a look at that. Okay. I'm not 100% sure from the way you asked it what your doubt is. Okay. So we can, so please let me know and we will surely take a look. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so Lalita saying it's like asking whether May should return June or June, right? Okay, so the question says, in order to fix the code, determine all the questions that your friend must ask. Okay, so if you have used code check, you will find that for May, the client doesn't want June. The client wants JUNE. And if you give the input capital M May, all caps, this code will convert that into lowercase May, and then it will return June. So this is not a question that you must ask to fix the code. Okay, Lalita, I hope that is clear. Why? Because on that input, the given code, even though it's not perfect, the given code works correctly for all capital May. Okay, right? So the given code is working correctly as far as the client is concerned. Okay, so this is not a question that you must ask. Again, the word must, right? It's not necessary to ask this question in order to fix the code. Okay, on the other hand, it is necessary to ask questions like this, right? And this one was really also hinting at to you that the client is only interested in the first three letters of the input. Okay. Okay. Yes, so it is again a question of should versus must, right? So again, better to get this clear. Um, Here we will use these words should and must, and again you will see the same words in the exam, right? Pay attention. Must means you have to do it. Should means it's good to do it, right? Uh, your friend is making a suggestion. If your friend says you must do this, that you have to think about. If your friend says you should do it, that's only a suggestion. It could be that you don't have to do it, but it might be that your friend is making a good suggestion. Okay. Now, please keep in mind, since must is a stronger statement, it doesn't mean that anytime someone says must, it's definitely wrong. right? Right here, you must ask this, you must ask this. Here, you don't have to ask this, you don't have to ask this. The code is already handling it for you. Okay, so it's not a mistake in this case. Okay, so yeah, so all options are good questions, but some of them are already taken care of, right? Asif wanted to know all options can be considered. Definitely, Asif, all of them are good suggestions, but some of them are already being handled correctly by the code, right? So it's only the other ones that need to be um dealt with. Okay, those are the only ones that must be done. Okay. Um, all right. Akhil is saying only doctors from the client, the code may be wrong. Yes, the code we know is wrong. So Mitraman wants to know, I want to ask that we are not considering case sensitivity to be an option for clarifying questions. I have not met the client. I don't know what type of accuracy they really want. The code check link gives changes for questions in the options, so I got confused. Okay, yes, certainly, you haven't met the client, and the client is only available through this code check link. And the code check link is only letting you ask on this input, what does the client want? On this input, what does the client want? Okay. I admit that is a very limited form of asking the client. In a real world client, you could probably ask them general questions. But here, in order to make this something that all of us can try at scale, this is the only way I can make this available. Okay. Uh, so let's see. Uh, so Asif wants to know, as all options are should, right? Okay, so Asif is asking, all of these questions, should I do this? Should I ask this, right? Uh, Now, admittedly, here there's a confusion. There's a word must here, there's a word should here, right? So let's think about this, right? So the question is, which of these questions do I have to ask the client, right? All these words, all these questions use the word should, right? But there is the word must here saying I have to go and ask the client this question, right? So do I have to ask the client this question, right? Why am I saying I don't have to ask the client this question, right? Suppose I ask the client, should I ignore the difference between uppercase and lowercase, example, may versus may, right? That question is not necessary to ask the client in this case. Why? Because in this case, the code already handles this for you. Whatever input you give, no matter what case it is, uppercase versus lowercase, this line, month is month.casefold, converts that input into lowercase, and then this code will return the correct answer. Okay. Therefore, it is not necessary to ask the client this question. In fact, here's a question to think about. If you have to ask the client this question, if you believe the answer to this is yes, right? Then let us find an input. Let us find an input for which case matters, but this code does not handle it correctly, right? You won't be able to find such a case because, in fact, what the client is interested in is exactly this logic. Now, you don't know that, right? Because you haven't met the client, as was said earlier, right? But I want you to try out different inputs. So that's the whole point of this question, is to try clarifying inputs, right? And you can only correct it if you can only mark this option as correct if you can find such an input. Then I feel I have to ask the client this question, right? No matter what case you try for these months, all combinations, this code handles it correctly. Okay. Um, okay. All right. So uh, by the way, I just want to clarify one thing. On the exam, on the NPTEL exam, I won't be able to give you code check links. So the corresponding questions on the exam are going to be much more straightforward. Once again, please look out for the practice exam version of this, right? This question really made you think. It was, you really had to sort of pay attention to it. And ideally, I would have liked you to be able to write the code for this, right? My original thought when I was giving you these ask the client questions was you would also be able to write the code here. But again, there are some limitations that I have to work with, including limitations on the NPTEL exam, where I can't actually have you write code, multi-line code on the exam, right? So these questions are probably a little bit more complex. The practice exam, the exam, the assignment questions are more complex than the questions that you will see on the exam, right? Um, so Srividya was saying, my thought process was we have assumed that while writing the code, we don't know anything and we should ask the questions to the client. Well, definitely we should ask the questions before writing the code. So good. That is the most important takeaway from this, right? Our friend has forgotten to ask the client certain questions. Our friend may have asked some questions, but not enough questions. Anyway, this code doesn't meet the client's wishes, right? So for example, as you would have found for junk and for other shorthand forms like Jan, this code doesn't work, right? They should have clarified that for Jan, they were expecting the answer February, and this code will not do it, right? If you give the answer Jan, this code will actually convert that Jan to lowercase, and then we'll try and look in the dictionary for Jan. It won't find some a key whose value is Jan, and so this will actually cause an error, right? You try it out, and you will get a key error in this case because there is no key corresponding to Jan. Okay? All right. So uh, next week, I mean, yes, it's causing an exception, right? So next week, we're talking about the material for this coming week is about learning a new programming language. So we've learned Python, some amount of Python. Um, a very important thing I want you to learn is use this base knowledge of one language to pick up some other language. Today, you might be interested in Python. Tomorrow, you might be interested in something else, right? Um, Srividya has an excellent suggestion. It would have been better with some doc tests, right? This is why we have doc tests, Srividya, right? We want to make the intention very clear. It would have been better if the client had given us some doc tests. It would have been better if the AI generated code had some doc tests that actually passed. Good. This is why doc tests help. It makes it very clear, or it helps to clarify what the task is. Okay. Okay, so this slide was there in the lecture notes. I was trying to point out that a very, very important thing, right? When you are learning a new programming language, just because certain words look the same as the words that you're familiar with, that does not mean they have the same meaning. Certain words or certain symbols, just because they look the same, does not mean they have the same meaning, right? So in the lecture notes, we had this example, right? There is this Python code, and there is this corresponding C code. And there are lots of differences between them. But for example, the word float in Python is also used here in C. The placement of the word is slightly different. When we're writing a function in C, we give the return type first. In Python, we give the return type hint last on the signature line. It's the last thing that we say before the colon, right? But in C, it's slightly strange. It's beginning here. Now, apart from that syntactic difference, the difference in syntax, right, the grammar rules of the language, the more important concern is the difference in semantics, in meaning, right? So the word float has a very different meaning in C versus Python, right? The lecture talks to you about this in more detail, right? Here I'm just highlighting for you how important it is, right? Similarly, this operation, this true division that we call in Python, right? We use the same symbol in C, and it means something different. This operator is not true division in C. It turns out there is a different semantics or meaning of the forward slash in C. In particular, if you're talking about integers, then forward slash is not true division. Here, this n is an integer. This is how we say that the parameter n has type int in C. Then 1 is an integer, n is an integer, and then this forward slash is not true division, it is integer division. And by the way, integer division in C has different semantics to floor division in Python, right? And this is the hardest thing while learning a new language. We come to this new programming language, in this case, C, we come to it knowing Python, and we're expecting the same concepts because the words look the same or the symbols look the same. We're expecting the meaning to be the same. And so the most important thing I want you to keep in mind when you are learning a new programming language is don't get fooled by that, right? It's unfortunate that sometimes different languages have different meaning, different semantics, even though the syntax looks familiar. I know some of you would have taken this course where we focused on Python and you already knew C programming. So for those of you, the initial part of the course would have been very confusing because you were expecting the semantics to be like C, and we're talking about Python. Now, those people, when you come to the C programming, you'll say, now it's all familiar. Now it's comfortable, right? But by now you have learned some Python. So again, you might be getting confused, right? So keep this point in mind that just because syntax, right? So Srividya is like, that's exactly the case for her, right? So just because the syntax looks familiar, just because the words or the symbols look familiar, does not mean when you move to a new language, it does not mean that the meaning or the semantics are the same, right? This is the most important lesson to keep in mind when you are working with a new programming language, right? So some of the questions that you will see in your quiz this week will sort of probe you in this direction. I hope the lectures are helpful in reminding you, and I wanted to just make sure that that is top of your mind here, right? So let's see. I missed Arya was saying, I have a doubt where case fold is given in the code. Can I ignore all case related clarifying questions, right? So again, Arya, the way to sort of tackle it for this particular problem, right, is can you come up with some other case related input, check it on code check, and see if what the client wants and what this code does are exactly the same, right? So that is the way I would like you to try it. Try all ways of uppercase, lowercase, right? I know there are lots and lots of ways, right? But within reason, you can try a whole bunch of cases, right? And you can check, right? Now, again, in the real world, this is not the real world, but in the real world, you can always talk to the client, right? This is exactly the point that I think earlier was who was making was it earlier I think Mitraman was making, right? It would be nice to be able to talk to a real client, right, instead of just this silly code check link. The code check link is very limited because you can only ask a question and get an answer. A real person, you can ask, look, how do you want me to handle this uppercase, lowercase? And they'll give you some statement. And then hopefully you say, oh, in that case, I'll use case fold, right? So a real programmer working with a real client will have a better interaction, hopefully, than this code check link. Since I cannot give you a real person to talk to, I'm giving you this very restricted link. My hope is that this exercise, even if it might have been a bit frustrating, helped you develop this skill. Eventually, this is the skill that I want you to develop to be able to ask clarifying questions. So I hope the question did help you explore that skill. It's a very, very important skill. And again, like the video lecture said, develop it together with AI, because by the time you use this in the real world, these AI tools are going to be much better. Okay. All right, so that is officially our time. I can stick around for a few extra minutes in case there are a few more clarifying questions you would like to ask. Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, then we'll close here.
Excuse me,
Thank
sir.
you. Yes, go ahead, please. Yeah. Yeah, there was a question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, there are some functions or some things in REPL which are not working at my end. So
Oh, I see.
yeah. So I wanted to ask whether it's a difference in the module or how can I correct it?
Okay. Have you asked this question on the in the forum?
No, sir, not yet.
Okay. If you can ask it in the forum, please, we will certainly answer it for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and again, it'll be helpful for others also, and also for us in case this is an issue that we have to be aware of. Okay, so thank you. Look forward to right. So when you do ask it in the REPL, please do mention which version of Python you're using. In case it is a difference in version, we will be able to clarify that more easily. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Anything else? Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so